So we've come to Arenberg, which is probably the most famous section of Parve in Paris Bay, and we're here to check out a new suspension system from HiRide, and we've brought along with us special guest John from Road.cc.
Yeah, with the idea being that on the off-road world, even in gravel bikes now, we deal with suspension all the time. So it's just good to have come along and see what suspension for road bikes is all like. This isn't entirely new, is it?
Last year, HiRide's system was used by Team Sky on their Pinarellos in both Paris Bay and in the Tour de France. But what's different this year is that now they've developed a new system for the front end of the bike.
And what we've also done is I've brought along a gravel bike to compare it to, and it's a Lauf True Grit, which is one of only a handful of gravel bikes that have suspension. Okay, in this case it's only front suspension, but it's quite a different concept because it's, instead of using like shock absorbers and dampers, it's just a leaf sprung item. So the idea is to see how that very basic simple suspension system stacks up against a much more technologically advanced version.
It's going to be an interesting day. Let's crack on. So we're here at Arenberg with Domenico, who's Mr. HiRide really. So do you want to talk us through the system? So you've had the rear suspension system for a year or 2 years now, and now we've brought in the accompanying front end.
Yes, the idea is to to suspend the entire bike. The concept is the same of the rear suspension, so an electronic system that acts using an hydraulic damper to lock or unlock the suspension, to have a fully stiff behavior when you need to transfer the power on smooth tarmac, and to have a very soft behavior when you need to absorb all the oscillation and vibration coming from the ground.
So say that we're on the roughest of terrains like here today. How much is it capable of smoothing the ride?
Well, we measured, because we come from the automotive field, so we measure pretty everything. So we measured that the average absorption of the vibration coming from the ground is of the 32%. So the rider perceived 32% of vibration less with respect to a full rigid bike.
Okay, and vibrations come in loads of different shapes and sizes, if you like.
Yeah.
Is this to particular parts of that spectrum, if you like?
Yeah, exactly. Because basically we analyzed which frequency bandwidth affect the most the rider experience, let me say, the rider feeling. So, and we noticed that this is between 10 Hz and 50 Hz. So we designed the suspension to have the highest absorption in that specific bandwidth. So that's why we designed the suspension with 20 millimeters of travel on the front and 11 millimeters of travel on the back, because there you can get the highest absorption in that frequency, and to reduce the fatigue and to increase the stability of a road bike.
But would I be right in saying, like, the really clever bit of the system is how it kind of filters out what it thinks is inputs from the rider, say you bouncing on the top of the bike and squashing the suspension, versus frequencies that will come from hitting the road? And is that like the heart of the system? Could you like explain a bit more how that works?
Yeah, exactly, because basically the system analyzes the vibration of the frame and make a distinction between energy coming from the rider and energy coming from the ground. So analyzing these two elements, we lock or unlock the suspension to let the rider always get or the better comfort in some cases, or to better transfer the power to the ground. It means that if you are on smooth asphalt, for example, and you are arc pedaling, the suspension automatically lock out to have a fully stiff bike actually.
Although you've designed your own suspension system around this, and you've got like the small elastomer sprung shock at the back and the coil sprung kind of like shock unit at the front, but the thing is you could apply this technology to pretty much any suspension system for a road bike. You could execute it in different ways because you can just lock it out and unlock it out, and the clever part is the brain of it.
Yes, exactly, because of course making suspension for a road bike, also mechanical side is pretty hard because dimensions, weight and all the constraints, but the real point of our system is of course the brain, so the electronic and all the algorithms that can give the capability to manage the suspension according to the rider needs in that specific case, so that we of course can bring that technology to other application and to other potentially manufacturer suspensions. Yeah. So basically, the technology comes from the automotive field because we previously worked in designing suspension control system and traction control system for motorbikes, so such as for Ducati, KTM, and so on and so forth. So our idea is to bring this technology in the bicycle industry because we strongly think this industry is ready to accept this kind of technology to make an upgrade in terms of vehicle dynamic.
Yeah, and would it be, or is there potential further down the line to integrate your system with other electronic systems such as shifting and all that?
We are fully open to integration with other systems, and we are already working with electric gear providers to integrate our system with them. So one battery, one interface to deliver to the rider a user-friendly experience.
So we're back at road.cc HQ now. We're done with the cobbles, and it's time to assess how we got on. John, what did you think?
Yeah, well, that's like no doubt on really lumpy ground. Bizarrely, full suspension is like really useful. It's like it was definitely more comfortable. You got more traction, which meant that it was more efficient because your wheel wasn't like skipping in the air. And the thing that's really noticeable was you could actually keep it pretty much where you wanted to have it pointed. Whereas on a rigid bike, that's sort of like it's kind of Russian roulette, really.
Absolutely. A rigid bike over those cobbles, you end up more or less where you want to go.
But, yeah,
within, you know.
About yay.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I know what you're saying, exactly. And compared to the Lauf, how did the HiRide system get on?
Well, there's a couple of things at play. First of all, the Lauf's fork is undamped, so it's good at like a few little bumps, but I did notice after enough of them, obviously you just got like another spring interacting with like more lumps, so that would start to get bouncy. There's no doubt that it definitely gave more comfort and control than not having it. And yeah, definitely the HiRide system, because it's got like a damper at the back, that that definitely saved your bum from getting beaten a fair bit. But the more interesting was, I think, was tyres, because the Lauf runs like 40mm tyres.
Yes, we had 40mm compared to, I think we were just like 32s or something.
Yeah, I think they're 32, so not like huge rubber.
No, not at all.
And that was definitely interesting, because you feel like the suspension on the HiRide was doing like an awful lot, but also the tyres on the Lauf were doing a massive amount too. It just depends sort of like where you're getting that suspension, and a tyre in any suspension system is basically like the first line of defence. It's like, yeah, you don't see like massive off-road vehicles running like really skinny tyres and then a foot of suspension. You need big rubber to work. But I think, again, that was sort of like, I think the cobbles were like a really extreme example of what this bike was about, and I think it's when you went on to like smoother stuff that it was actually a bit more interesting for me.
Yeah, the cobbles were interesting in that they were kind of eye-catching. kind of demonstration, but it's not exactly what you're going to be riding every day for.
I'd hope not.
99%. No way.
It'd be a terrible life if you had to ride that all the time. I think you'd give up on bikes.
Yeah, but I mean, when you did move to the non-cobbled surfaces, how did you find the HiRide system there?
There is actually really impressive. So with the with sort of basically you can have it manually locked, manually unlocked, or you can have it in the automatic setting. And then in automatic there are the 3 modes. One which is the sport, which is kind of like it keeps it locked out for a bit longer. So you need to like really bump into something before it opens up the suspension. Then in tourism, it was it was sort of like it took much less of a bump to open it up. And then in custom, you can basically customise how much it takes. And it's really interesting going back and forth between like the sport and the tourism. So I really did notice, like in tourism, like just a little bit of broken ground, and it would open up and it'd be very comfy, and kind of like hear the whir of the servo, see it change on the head unit, it'd be like, oh yeah, that's done it. And on sport, it'd be like much more aggressive. And I think there it's sort of like I could start to really see the point of the system. And that's like the clever bit of it, really.
So, sort of the million-dollar question is, do we think that a system like this, obviously it's a high-end system right now because in terms of price,
very much so,
because it's going to be, anything, that's just the way it works. But I mean, long term, are we going to see this perhaps filter down through the price ranges to become a bit more accessible, and if so, in what particular areas do you think?
I think you could definitely see that HiRide isn't really interested in making like suspension for things. They're interested in selling their system, basically selling the brains of it, and I assume the plan is to let other manufacturers sort out like how you actually implement it. But their clever bit is the electronics, and it being able to pick up on like when you're riding on something smooth, when you're riding on something bumpy, without the complexity of other sort of semi-active systems where you're going to need accelerometers on the unsprung bits, so like your fork and your swing arm, as well as that. So this does it all off one sensor, which means it's much more compact, loads easier to integrate. And I could definitely see that for a lot of bikes, I assume maybe starting with stuff like gravel or sort of like touring, so sporty, sort of comfort-orientated bikes first, so that'd actually be like a pretty big sell, and add that comfort and the traction and increased efficiency. That might outweigh the fact that it's always going to weigh more. So I think they were saying around 600 grams, but that was just for the gubbins, not necessarily for the suspension that you're going to put it on. That's going to be weight on top. So I mean, from a pure road perspective, can you see that being?
From a road race as we know it these days point of view, perhaps not. Perhaps it's a long way off being incorporated onto UCI World Tour bikes. But as you're saying, for less well-surfaced roads, gravel being the obvious example, I can see that there's a function there that's useful, and it's just right now the cost.
Yeah, and again, saying about all that function, so this has got, what's it, 11mm at the rear wheel, 25 at the front, and it's like, well, you could probably get another 11mm of rear wheel travel by going Road Plus and putting a 650 wheel and then a 47C, and that'd be a little bit slower rolling, but not that much. And again, this is the other thing, without doing like proper kind of scientific power meter back-to-back testing, you can definitely tell the comfort, but in terms of the efficiency, is that going to increase or decrease, or where's the trade-off? So at the moment, I think it's really interesting technology, but if you want the effects on a much lower budget, consider big tyres.
Okay. So please let us know what you think. We'll be really interested in your comments. Is suspension for road or gravel bikes just pie in the sky stuff, or is it going to help shape the future of our sport? Please let us know in the comments down below. Please like this video and subscribe to road.cc on YouTube, and thank you very much indeed for watching.